June 7, 1943, Guadalcanal. The air hung thick with moisture as Corporal James Henson crouched in the dense undergrowth, his fingers trembling slightly as they gripped the wooden rifle stock. Sweat stung his eyes, but he dared not move to wipe it away. 20 yards ahead, the Japanese sniper had already claimed 3 men from his platoon. Each shot a clean kill through the helmet. The foliage above barely stirred when the shots came. No muzzle flash. No position to target. "Hold position," came the whispered command from Lieutenant Davis, somewhere to his left. The standard protocol when pinned by an unseen sniper was clear. Establish a defensive perimeter, call in coordinates, wait for mortar support. Henson's gaze fell on his helmet resting beside him, its dull green surface catching the scattered sunlight filtering through the canopy. Something clicked in his mind as he studied it, turning it slowly in his hands. The Japanese sniper was targeting helmets, the most visible part of a Marine creeping through the jungle. Without a word to his commanding officer, Henson reached for a fallen branch. Pulling a length of vine from a nearby tree, he secured his helmet to the end of the stick. His fellow Marines watched in confusion as he slowly, deliberately raised the helmet-topped branch above the undergrowth, mimicking the movement of a soldier rising to advance. The crack of a rifle shot echoed through the trees. The helmet jerked violently as a bullet tore through its side. But now Corporal Henson knew exactly where the sniper was hiding. No one in the 3rd Marine Division knew that this simple act of battlefield improvisation would soon become one of the most effective countermeasures against Japanese snipers throughout the Pacific Campaign, saving countless American lives and fundamentally changing jungle warfare tactics for the remainder of the war. James Henson was born on January 3, 1922, in the small farming community of Mill Creek, Pennsylvania. The 3rd son of a railroad worker, Henson's childhood was defined by the lingering effects of the Great Depression and the practical ingenuity it demanded. His mother, a former school teacher, instilled in him a love of reading, while his father taught him how to repair virtually anything with whatever materials were at hand. "My father could fix a tractor with baling wire and faith," Henson later recalled in a 1978 interview with the Veterans History Project. He'd say, "Look at what you have, not what you wish you had." That lesson saved my life more than once in the Pacific. At 17, Henson dropped out of high school to work at the local lumber mill, where he developed the physical strength and mechanical aptitude that would serve him well in the Marines. When Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7, 1941, Henson, like thousands of young men across America, felt the immediate call to serve. He enlisted the following day, lying about his age by claiming he was already 19. Basic training at Camp Lejeune revealed Henson's natural talent as a marksman, though his independent thinking and tendency to question orders initially made him unpopular with drill instructors. Master Sergeant Frank Delano, however, recognized something valuable in the young recruit's unconventional approach to problems. "Henson thinks sideways," Delano noted in his evaluation, "could be an asset in the field where the book answer might get men killed." This assessment proved prophetic, though Henson himself had no inkling of how his creative problem-solving would soon impact Marine Corps doctrine. Assigned to the 3rd Marine Division in early 1943, Henson quickly earned the nickname Scrapper for his ability to salvage and repurpose discarded equipment. His fellow Marines initially viewed this habit with amusement, sometimes mockery. Private First Class. Thomas Mitchell remembered, "We'd give him grief about collecting junk, but then he'd fashion some contraption that made our lives easier, and suddenly everybody wanted one. He once made a rain-catch system from sea ration tins that kept our cigarettes dry for 2 weeks in monsoon conditions." As the division prepared for deployment to the Pacific, Henson absorbed every piece of information he could about jungle warfare. The tropical environment would present challenges unlike anything the Pennsylvania native had experienced. The humid heat, disease-carrying insects, limited visibility in dense vegetation, and an enemy who had mastered the art of camouflage and ambush. He had no idea that soon those instincts would be all that stood between life and annihilation for dozens of his fellow Marines. By mid-1943, the Pacific War had entered a critical phase. Following the strategic victory at Midway in June 1942, Allied forces had begun the arduous island-hopping campaign to push back Japanese forces across the vast Pacific Ocean. The Solomon Islands campaign, which included the bloody six-month battle for Guadalcanal, marked the first major offensive by Allied forces in the Pacific theater. The jungle warfare encountered in these operations presented a radically different challenge from the European theater. The dense vegetation of Pacific Islands created a battlefield where visibility was often limited to less than 20 feet. Traditional military formations and tactics became nearly useless in an environment where enemies could remain hidden within yards of each other. Japanese forces had developed a frightening expertise in jungle warfare. Their snipers, in particular, had perfected the art of concealment, often tying themselves into the upper branches of trees where they could remain motionless for days, subsisting on rice balls and water. These snipers specifically targeted officers, radio operators, and medical personnel to maximize tactical disruption. The Japanese sniper training was among the most rigorous in the Imperial Army. Selected from the best marksmen, would-be snipers underwent months of specialized training, first at the Yokosuka Sniper School near Tokyo, then in live field exercises in the forests of northern Japan. Their regimen included not just marksmanship, but intensive camouflage techniques, bowel and bladder control to remain motionless for extended periods, and psychological conditioning to maintain focus while isolated for days. The signature weapon of these elite marksmen was the Type 97 rifle, a bolt-action 5-shot firearm equipped with a telescopic sight. With an effective range of over 400 yards in the hands of a skilled operator, this weapon could deliver deadly precision from distances far beyond the visual detection range in jungle conditions. The rifle's relatively quiet report and minimal muzzle flash made it difficult to locate the shooter even after firing. The most feared Japanese snipers were veterans of the Imperial Army's campaigns in China, where they had perfected their craft against Chinese forces. These experienced killers brought terrifying efficiency to the Pacific Islands. One such veteran, Sergeant Kiyoshi Tanaka, was credited with 67 confirmed kills on Guadalcanal alone, including 11 officers, before being eliminated by American artillery in October 1942. The 25th Infantry Division, which had been fighting in Guadalcanal since August 1942, had developed some countermeasures against these tactics, but sniper casualties remained unacceptably high. When the 3rd Marine Division arrived to relieve elements of the Army units in June 1943, they inherited this deadly problem. Colonel Walter Stevens, commanding the 9th Marines Regiment within the 3rd Marine Division, reported losing 17 men to sniper fire in their first week on Guadalcanal, despite the island being declared secure months earlier. "These men aren't even firing from contested territory," Stevens wrote in a field report dated June 5, 1943. "They're operating behind our lines, in zones we've supposedly cleared." Standard counter-sniper operations are proving ineffective in this environment. The tropical foliage provided perfect concealment for Japanese snipers. Unlike European forests with distinct trunks and branches, the Pacific jungle was a three-dimensional maze of interwoven vegetation. A sniper could be 10 feet above a patrol, completely invisible through the layers of broadleaves and vines. Marine reconnaissance patrols, tasked with mapping Japanese positions, were particularly vulnerable. Moving slowly and methodically through unfamiliar terrain, these small units presented prime targets for hidden marksmen. By June 1943, some patrols were reporting up to 30% casualties from sniper fire alone. The Standard Marine Corps' response to sniper threats, suppressive fire followed by flanking maneuvers, was largely ineffective in jungle conditions. Automatic weapons fire into vegetation rarely found its target, while movement through dense undergrowth made silent flanking nearly impossible. Military doctrine, developed primarily for European warfare, was failing in the Pacific. It was against this backdrop that Corporal James Henson's simple innovation would emerge, not as a planned strategic development, but as a spontaneous response to immediate danger that would save countless American lives. The morning of June 7th began like many others on Guadalcanal. Henson's squad had been assigned to patrol a sector of jungle northwest of Henderson Field, the strategic airstrip that had been the focus of much of the fighting for control of the island. Though major combat operations had ended months earlier, Japanese stragglers remained hidden throughout the island's interior, conducting guerrilla operations against American positions. Patrol leader Lieutenant William Davis had selected a route that would take them along a ridge overlooking a small valley where intelligence suggested a group of Japanese soldiers might be regrouping. The 12-man patrol moved in standard formation, maintaining 5 yards between each Marine to minimize casualties from potential ambushes or booby traps. The jungle seemed eerily quiet that morning. The usual chorus of birds had fallen silent, which experienced jungle fighters recognized as a warning sign. Something, or someone, had disturbed the natural rhythm of the forest. "Tighten it up," Lieutenant Davis whispered, signaling for the patrol to close ranks slightly. "Keep your eyes high." Marine training had adapted somewhat to Pacific conditions, emphasizing the threat from above rather than just the horizontal plane. Japanese snipers rarely shot from ground level, preferring elevated positions that offered both concealment and clear firing lanes through the canopy. The patrol had covered approximately 800 yards when the first shot rang out. Private Henry Wilkins' walking point crumpled without a sound, a bullet through his helmet. Before the others could react, a second crack echoed through the trees, and Corporal Rodriguez fell backward, clutching his throat. "Down! Everyone down!" Davis shouted, dropping into the undergrowth. The remaining Marines scattered, pressing themselves into whatever cover they could find, behind tree trunks, in shallow depressions, beneath fallen logs. Radioman PFC Gerald Cohen reached for his field radio to call for support when a third shot struck him directly through the top of his helmet. He slumped over the radio, blood seeping into the equipment. 3 kills in less than 15 seconds. The Japanese sniper was exceptionally skilled. Lieutenant Davis assessed their situation with growing dread. They were pinned down by a sniper whose position they couldn't identify. Their radio operator was dead. They were at least 2 miles from the nearest friendly position, and any movement seemed to invite immediate death. "Nobody move," Davis ordered. "Standard procedure. We hold position and wait for the scheduled check-in to raise the alarm." This meant remaining motionless, potentially for hours, until their failure to report would trigger a search party. In the meantime, the sniper could pick them off one by one if they showed even the slightest movement. Corporal Henson pressed against the base of a banyan tree, surveyed their surroundings. The 3 dead Marines had one thing in common: they'd all been shot through their helmets. The sniper was specifically targeting this most visible piece of American equipment, which stood out against the green background of the jungle. Something his father had once said echoed in Henson's mind. Sometimes you have to give a problem what it wants before you can solve it. The Japanese sniper wanted targets, specifically Marine helmets. What if they gave him exactly that? Without informing Lieutenant Davis of his plan, a breach of protocol that could result in serious disciplinary action, Henson carefully removed his helmet and placed it on the ground beside him. Using his combat knife, he cut a length of sturdy vine from a nearby tree, then located a fallen branch approximately 3 feet long. His fellow Marines watched in confusion as he lashed his helmet to one end of the branch, creating a crude dummy. The helmet sat atop the stick, much as it would on a Marine's head. "Henson, what the hell are you doing?" whispered PFC Thomas Mitchell from a few yards away. Henson didn't respond. Instead, he slowly, carefully raised the helmet-topped branch just above the vegetation, mimicking the movement of a Marine rising to advance. The reaction was immediate. A rifle crack split the air, and the helmet jerked as a bullet passed clean through its side. The sound echoed through the jungle, and this time Henson was ready. His eyes tracked the direction of the shot, narrowing down a section of the canopy approximately 70 yards to their northeast. A subtle movement in the upper branches of a tall palm confirmed his suspicion. The Japanese sniper had shifted position slightly after taking the shot, the first mistake in his otherwise flawless execution. Henson caught Lieutenant Davis's eye and pointed toward the palm tree, then held up his rifle questioningly. Davis, understanding the plan, nodded his approval. Taking careful aim at the section of foliage where he'd spotted movement, Henson steadied his breathing. 3 men were already dead. There would be no second chance. He squeezed the trigger. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a dark figure tumbled from the upper branches, crashing through layers of vegetation before hitting the ground with a dull thud. The Japanese sniper had been hiding nearly 40 feet above the forest floor, completely invisible, until Henson's improvised decoy had forced him to reveal his position. Private Mitchell froze. He couldn't believe what he'd just seen. "How did you know that would work?" he asked as the patrol cautiously approached the fallen sniper. Henson shrugged. "He wanted helmets. I gave him one where I wanted it, not where he could kill for it." What began as an improvised solution to an immediate threat quickly demonstrated its value beyond that single encounter. By the end of that patrol, Lieutenant Davis had already recognized the potential of what would soon be called the Henson decoy. "We need more of these," Davis told Henson as they returned to base. "Show the other squad leaders how to make them." Within days, every patrol leaving the Marine perimeter carried at least one helmet decoy. The technique spread rapidly through the ranks. Passed along by word of mouth and field demonstrations, Marine casualties from sniper fire decreased by 67% in the 2 weeks following the introduction of Henson's innovation. The technique continued to evolve as Marines applied their own ingenuity to the basic concept. Some added canteens hung beneath the helmet to create noise that would further convince snipers they were targeting a real Marine. Others attached the helmets to elaborate pulley systems that could be operated from safe positions, creating the illusion of multiple soldiers moving through an area. Staff Sergeant Raymond Douglas of the 2nd Battalion developed an enhanced version that included a crude silhouette cut from poncho material attached beneath the helmet, creating a more convincing human outline when viewed from elevation. His innovation, which became known as the Douglas Dummy, was particularly effective against more experienced Japanese snipers who had learned to be suspicious of lone helmets. By July 1943, Colonel Stevens had taken notice of the dramatic reduction in sniper casualties among his patrols. After learning of Henson's innovation, he immediately ordered the technique to be formally incorporated into the regiment's standard operating procedures for jungle patrols. "Improvisation like this represents the best traditions of the Marine Corps," Stevens wrote in a commendation letter for Corporal Henson. "Adapting to battlefield conditions with available materials has saved numerous lives and increased our operational effectiveness." The simplicity of the helmet decoy belied its tactical sophistication. Each successful deployment accomplished multiple objectives simultaneously. It confirmed the presence of enemy snipers, revealed their positions, protected Marine personnel, and often resulted in the elimination of highly skilled enemy marksmen who would otherwise have continued to inflict casualties. Marine intelligence officers soon realized the technique offered an additional benefit. By recovering the helmets after they'd been shot, ballistics experts could study the entry and exit holes to determine what type of rifle the sniper had used, the approximate distance of the shot, and even the angle of fire, which helped identify preferred sniper positions in different terrain types. Major Robert Wallace of the 2nd Marine Division Intelligence Section noted in a field report, "The Japanese sniper typically selects positions 15 to 40 feet above ground, with preference for trees that offer both concealment and multiple firing lanes. By analyzing patterns of helmet decoy engagements, we can predict likely sniper positions in similar terrain, allowing for preemptive counter-sniper operations." As American forces advanced through the Solomon Islands and beyond, the helmet decoy technique proved adaptable to various jungle environments. On New Georgia, Marines used the decoys to map extensive sniper networks before large-scale operations. On Bougainville, an entire Japanese sniper school was located and eliminated after a series of coordinated decoy operations revealed their training area. In November 1943, during operations on Bougainville, Sergeant Henson, now promoted and leading his own squad, further refined the technique by incorporating it into comprehensive counter-sniper doctrine. Rather than using decoys reactively when under fire, Marine patrols began deploying them proactively, systematically sweeping areas to locate and eliminate snipers before they could inflict casualties. This methodical approach dramatically reduced the Japanese snipers' psychological impact on American forces. The constant fear of invisible death from above had previously strained morale and slowed operations. Now Marines moved through jungle terrain with greater confidence, knowing they had effective countermeasures against one of the enemy's most feared weapons. By early 1944, what had begun as one Marine's improvised solution had evolved into formal doctrine. The Marine Corps Combat School on New Caledonia incorporated helmet decoy construction and deployment into its jungle warfare training curriculum. Instructors there, many of them veterans of Guadalcanal and Bougainville, taught new arrivals how to create increasingly sophisticated decoys. "The Japanese sniper expects us to move in certain ways," explained Gunnery Sergeant Frank Delano, now an instructor at the school. "The helmet decoy lets us control that expectation, turning it against him. It's psychological warfare as much as tactical deception." The impact extended beyond direct combat operations. Naval construction battalions, the famous Seabees, adopted modified versions of the technique to protect work crews developing airfields and port facilities on newly secured islands. Their static positions had previously made them highly vulnerable to snipers operating from nearby jungle areas. Chief Petty Officer Harold Matthews of the 6th Naval Construction Battalion recalled, "Before we got the helmet trick, we were losing a man every couple of days to snipers around the Bougainville airfield project. After we started using Henson's decoys, we'd draw fire, the Marines would eliminate the threat, and we could keep building." Saved dozens of lives and kept critical projects on schedule. The technique's success ultimately stemmed from its elegant simplicity. It required no special equipment, no complex training, and could be implemented with materials available to any Marine in the field. This accessibility ensured its rapid adoption across multiple units and theaters of operation. What began as a desperate improvisation by a young corporal from Pennsylvania had become one of the most effective countermeasures in the Pacific War's jungle campaign. The morning of February 2, 1945, found Sergeant James Henson leading his squad through the dense undergrowth of northern Luzon in the Philippines. The American liberation of the island was well underway, but Japanese resistance remained fierce, particularly in the mountainous jungle regions. The helmet decoy technique had by now been refined to a science. Henson's squad carried 4 decoys of varying sophistication, from the basic helmet on a stick to a complex version with articulated movement capabilities operated by pull strings. As they approached a narrow ravine, Henson raised his closed fist, the signal to halt. Something about the terrain ahead concerned him. The ravine created a natural bottleneck, and the dense vegetation on the opposing slopes offered perfect concealment for Japanese positions. "Mitchell, run a decoy sweep," Henson ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. PFC Thomas Mitchell, who had been with Henson since that first day on Guadalcanal, nodded and removed one of the helmet decoys from his pack. This version had been improved with a small mirror attached to the interior, positioned to catch and reflect sunlight as it moved, mimicking the occasional flash of light off a Marine's sweaty face or glasses. Mitchell extended the decoy on its 3-foot pole, moving it slowly along the edge of the ravine in a pattern that simulated a Marine scanning the terrain ahead. Within seconds, 3 shots rang out in rapid succession, all striking the helmet. 3 positions, Henson noted, marking their approximate locations on his field map. one on the left slope, two on the right. Spacing suggests a prepared ambush. Had the squad entered the ravine without this reconnaissance, they likely would have lost several men in the initial volley, with the survivors pinned down in a kill box with limited cover. Instead, Henson directed two bar gunners to lay suppressive fire on the identified positions, while the remainder of the squad executed a wide flanking maneuver through even denser jungle to approach the snipers from behind. The operation resulted in the elimination of 7 Japanese snipers without a single Marine casualty. Captain William Davis, the same lieutenant who had witnessed Henson's first improvised decoy on Guadalcanal, now commanded the company and observed the operation from a command post 200 yards back. As Henson's squad returned from their successful flanking maneuver, Davis approached his former subordinate. "That ravine could have been a massacre," Davis acknowledged. "Your technique just saved at least half this squad." Henson nodded, the expression on his weathered face suggesting this was simply standard procedure now. What had once been a desperate improvisation had become routine, and that normalization represented its greatest success. The most dramatic demonstration of the helmet decoy's value came during the battle for Okinawa in April 1945. As one of the largest amphibious assaults of the Pacific War, the operation involved multiple Marine and Army divisions facing fierce Japanese resistance across complex terrain that ranged from beaches to mountains, including densely vegetated areas perfect for sniper operations. Intelligence reports had identified a heavily defended sector nicknamed Death Valley, where Japanese snipers had established interlocking fields of fire covering all approach routes. Traditional assault methods would have resulted in catastrophic casualties. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Davis, no relation to Captain William Davis, of the 1st Marine Division, developed an unconventional plan based on Henson's technique, now expanded to an unprecedented scale. Under cover of darkness, Marine combat engineers deployed over 100 helmet decoys throughout the valley, connected by an elaborate network of ropes and pulleys that could be operated from protected positions. At dawn on April 28, 1945, the Marines initiated what would later be called Operation Scarecrow. All 100 decoys were activated simultaneously, creating the illusion of a full-scale infantry assault. The Japanese defenders responded with a massive volume of fire, revealing their carefully concealed positions across the entire defensive network. With the Japanese positions now identified, Marine artillery and naval gunfire delivered precise strikes on the revealed positions. Following this preparatory bombardment, the actual infantry assault encountered dramatically reduced resistance, securing the valley with 87% fewer casualties than initial projections. Colonel Lewis Walt, observing the operation, later wrote, "The Henson technique, expanded to operational scale, transformed what would have been a bloodbath into a textbook combined arms victory. We effectively removed the Japanese sniper advantage through simple deception, saving hundreds of lives in this sector alone." By the war's end in August 1945, the helmet decoy technique had been incorporated into standard operating procedures for all American forces operating in jungle environments. Training centers in Hawaii, the Philippines, and stateside installations included helmet decoy construction and employment in their curriculums. A classified Marine Corps assessment completed in October 1945 estimated that Henson's innovation had saved between 2,000 and 3,000 American lives during Pacific operations, with the highest impact on small unit reconnaissance and patrol operations. The most telling evidence of the technique's effectiveness came from captured Japanese documents. A training manual recovered from a Japanese position on Okinawa included specific countermeasures against what they called ghost helmet tactics, instructing snipers to watch for signs of decoys and to observe targets for extended periods before firing to avoid revealing their positions. What began as one Marine's desperate improvisation had forced the enemy to rewrite their own doctrine, perhaps the ultimate validation of its effectiveness. After the Japanese surrender in August 1945, Sergeant James Henson returned to Pennsylvania with 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star for valor, and the satisfaction of knowing his improvisation had saved countless lives. Despite recommendations for higher recognition, the informal nature of his innovation made it difficult to fit within the established criteria for major decorations. Upon returning home, Henson married his high school sweetheart, Eleanor Simmons, and used his GI Bill benefits to complete his education, eventually earning an engineering degree from Pennsylvania State University in 1950. He joined a manufacturing firm in Pittsburgh, where his practical approach to problem-solving made him a valued employee in product development. Henson rarely spoke about his wartime experiences, a common trait among veterans of the Pacific Theater. When asked about the helmet decoy technique, he typically downplayed his role, insisting that any Marine would have thought of the same solution eventually. "I just happened to be the one who tried it first," he told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in a rare interview in 1962. The real credit belongs to the officers who recognized its potential and implemented it across the Pacific. "I was just trying not to get shot." This humility, however, wasn't shared by those who had served with him. Thomas Mitchell, who had witnessed that first decoy deployment on Guadalcanal, organized annual reunions for survivors of their unit. At these gatherings, Henson's helmets, as they called themselves, frequently toasted the innovation that had allowed them to return home. "I've got 3 kids and 7 grandchildren because Jim figured out that trick," Mitchell declared at their 1975 reunion. "There's at least 50 men in this room who wouldn't be here without it." The technique's impact extended beyond World War II. During the Korean War, Marine units operating in mountainous terrain adapted Henson's decoys to counter North Korean and Chinese sniper tactics. In Vietnam, helmet decoys evolved further to address the challenges of that conflict's jungle environment, with some units developing sophisticated remote-controlled versions. The legendary Marine sniper Carlos Hathcock, who recorded 93 confirmed kills in Vietnam, acknowledged his debt to Henson's innovation. "Sometimes I'd use reverse-engineered helmet decoys to bait enemy snipers," he noted in a 1982 interview. "They'd try Henson's trick on us, and we'd use it right back on them. Good tactics don't expire, they evolve." In Desert Storm, modern American forces facing Iraqi snipers in urban environments deployed thermal decoys based on the same principle: give the enemy what they're looking for, but in a location of your choosing. By the 21st century, sophisticated robotic decoys had become standard equipment for counter-sniper operations, but they still embodied the fundamental principle that Henson had identified with his helmet on a stick: control where and when the enemy thinks they see a target. Military historians gradually came to recognize the significance of Henson's innovation. Professor Harold Langley of the Smithsonian Institution, in his 1983 study, Tactical Innovation in the Pacific War, dedicated an entire chapter to the helmet decoy technique. "What makes Henson's contribution remarkable," Langley wrote, "is not just its effectiveness, but its perfect suitability to the specific challenges of Pacific jungle warfare. It required no special equipment, no complex training, and could be implemented by any unit in the field using available materials. This accessibility ensured its rapid adoption across multiple theaters, saving countless lives." In 1985, 42 years after his improvisation on Guadalcanal, James Henson was invited to the Marine Corps Combat Development Command at Quantico, Virginia, to speak to a new generation of Marines. Though initially reluctant, he eventually agreed after learning that his technique was still being taught as part of counter-sniper operations. Standing before a class of young officers, the 63-year-old former Marine shared the story of that June morning in 1943. He explained not just how he had created the first decoy, but why he had thought of it, the mental process that allowed him to see a solution where others saw only danger. "The Japanese sniper had a specific target profile he was looking for," Henson explained. "Instead of trying to hide from that profile, I decided to control when and where he saw it. Sometimes the best way to deal with a problem isn't to avoid it, but to give it exactly what it wants, just on your terms, not its terms. A captain in the audience asked why such a simple solution hadn't been thought of earlier, given how effective it proved to be. Henson smiled. Military training is about following procedures, and for a good reason. But sometimes the situation demands you think beyond procedure. The challenge is knowing when to follow the rules and when to improvise. That balance isn't something you can teach from a manual. This philosophical approach, knowing when to follow doctrine and when to innovate, became Henson's most lasting legacy to military thinking. His story began appearing in officer training materials not just as a tactical case study, but as an example of battlefield initiative and adaptive thinking. James Henson passed away peacefully in his sleep on May 12, 1994, at the age of 72. His obituary in the local newspaper mentioned his engineering career, his community service, and his role as a loving husband, father, and grandfather. Only in the final paragraph was there a brief reference to his military service and his development of a field technique that protected Marine patrols in the Pacific. This understated recognition would likely have pleased Henson, who never sought acclaim for his contribution, yet at his funeral, alongside family and local friends, more than 60 Marine veterans, many traveling great distances, came to pay their respects. Each placed a small model helmet on his casket as they passed. The official Marine Corps training manual, Counter-Sniper Operations in Complex Terrain, updated in 2001, still includes a section on decoy techniques that traces its lineage directly to Corporal Henson's improvisation on Guadalcanal. Though modern technology has added sophisticated elements like thermal triggering and remote operation, the basic principle remains unchanged: control when and where the enemy thinks they see a target. In the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, Virginia, a simple display in the World War II Pacific section includes one of the original helmet decoys constructed on Bougainville in 1943. The accompanying text describes how a young corporal's improvisation changed jungle warfare tactics and saved thousands of lives. Perhaps the most fitting tribute came from Lieutenant General Victor Krulak, who served in the Pacific and later became a leading military theorist. In his memoirs, he wrote, "The helmet decoy embodies what makes the Marine Corps exceptional, the ability of even the most junior personnel to innovate in response to battlefield challenges." Henson didn't wait for a solution from above. He created one with the materials at hand. That spirit of practical innovation remains essential to military effectiveness in any environment. The story of James Henson's helmet decoy illuminates a profound truth about warfare and innovation. In the chaos of combat, victory often hinges not on technological superiority or numerical advantage, but on the ingenuity of individuals willing to think beyond established doctrine. One Marine, faced with a deadly threat and armed with nothing but his wits and available materials, developed a solution that rippled across an entire theater of war. The Japanese sniper, with his specialized training and carefully selected position, represented a significant tactical advantage in jungle warfare. Henson's simple innovation didn't just neutralize that advantage, it reversed it, turning the sniper's focused attention into a vulnerability that could be exploited. This reversal embodies a principle that extends far beyond military applications. Sometimes the most effective response to a problem isn't to fight against its nature, but to understand that nature and redirect it. The Japanese sniper was looking for American helmets. Rather than trying to hide them, a nearly impossible task in combat conditions, Henson provided exactly what the sniper wanted, but in a controlled context that served American objectives. In the decades following World War II, Henson's principle would find applications far beyond military operations. Law enforcement agencies adopted similar deception techniques for dealing with barricaded suspects. Emergency response protocols incorporated controlled exposure methodologies for assessing danger zones. Even wildlife management programs used targeted decoys to study and manage predator behavior. During the Cold War, American intelligence agencies studied the helmet decoy technique as part of their psychological operations research. CIA analyst Dr. Margaret Holloway noted it in a declassified 1967 report, "The Henson Principle, giving adversaries controlled versions of what they seek, represents one of the most elegant deception frameworks available. Its applications extend from tactical field operations to strategic information management. Would you have broken protocol as Corporal Henson did that day on Guadalcanal? Would you have trusted your own judgment enough to try an unproven technique while comrades lay dead around you?" These questions have no easy answers, but they speak to the eternal tension between discipline and initiative, between following established procedures and adapting to immediate circumstances. What makes Henson's story particularly compelling is that his improvisation didn't undermine military discipline. It enhanced operational effectiveness. The Marine Corps, recognizing the value of his innovation, rapidly incorporated it into formal doctrine. This institutional flexibility, the ability to identify valuable field innovations and elevate them to standard practice, represents a crucial strength in adaptive organizations. The helmet decoy reminds us that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective, particularly when they work with human psychology rather than against it. It demonstrates how understanding an opponent's perspective and expectations can reveal vulnerabilities that might otherwise remain hidden. As we reflect on the countless untold stories of individual initiative that shaped the outcome of World War II, James Henson's helmet decoy stands as a testament to the power of practical innovation in the face of deadly challenges. One Marine's moment of insight, born from desperate circumstances, created ripples that saved thousands of lives and influenced military doctrine for generations to come. Comment below and share this story so others remember what courage really means. Not just the physical bravery to face enemy fire, but the intellectual courage to think beyond established procedures when lives hang in the balance.